All right, welcome back once again, everyone, to the Football Goons podcast here, episode 108. We are going to do this week what pretty much everyone's doing this weekend if you talk about football. And we're going to recap parts of this past week's NFL draft. As always, this year's selection process offered plenty of perceived reaches, slides, and that proved, as always, that we as the general public really don't know anything. If everyone's shocked except for the guys making picks, we didn't know it. We're going to talk about those players that we felt didn't go when we thought they should. We're going to hit some perfect team player fits and some of the guys who landed, of course, since it's the Football Goons podcast. We're going to hit you guys in the prime fantasy football spots for the 2018 season. All right, so we're going to kick this thing right off. We've got a lot to get to here tonight. The one thing we're not going to do is grades, and I'll just say you're welcome.
Very welcome.
Very welcome. I guess we could do a podcast on grades of the 2015 draft because that's about as accurate as we're going to get here. All right, but we're not going to grade 2018 because, hey, I'll read them too, but it is ridiculous. So anyway, so let's get right into this. We're going to kick this thing off. We're going to get positive right away before we get negative in just a little bit here. But we're going to kick this off just Thursday night's activity. Thursday night, round one, prime time, where all the money's really made. Guys, what pick did you like the most of round one and why?
Yeah, I'll jump in first, and I feel like a lot of my stuff is kind of like love it or hate it opinion-wise tonight, so I'll just throw that right out there. I'm expected to get some slack for some of this, but I liked a lot of the first-round picks. I mean, you could have picked a number of different things here, but what I liked really specifically was Josh Rosen to the Cardinals at number 10. Look, here's a guy who, by a lot of accounts, could have been number one overall. I mean, any of these quarterbacks technically could have been number one overall based on what we heard, leading up to the draft. But the Cardinals kind of allowed the draft to mostly come to them. They did trade up, but, the trade impact was really minimal to get a potential franchise quarterback for them. So it wasn't as drastic as some years past where they had to give up an arm and a leg to move up. It was a very minimal move up to number 10 to get probably the most polished passer in the draft. Now, does he have the highest ceiling in the draft? Probably not, but he has one of the safer floors, and you can work with that because the other benefit that they have is that there's no rush to get him on the field right away. If he exceeds expectations and he gets on the field and he outperforms, then great. But you don't have to force the issue to make him your week one starter. I get it that he was taken at number 10, but you brought in some veteran quarterbacks to kind of give you that buffer so that if we don't get Josh Rosen as a starter until week 6, week 7, it's not the end of the world. I don't think anybody, probably a lot of people in the Cardinals, don't feel like they're a deep playoff team this year, if they're even a playoff contender. So you got a guy who you can kind of refine and develop behind the guys that you brought in. I think it's a perfect marriage, perfect situation in round one.
The only thing I'll argue with you about is that, he's not going to be your number 3 on the depth chart. He's going to be behind Sam. And with that injury history, he's going to start early. So he might get thrown to the Wolves a lot quicker than they want him to because of their player situation and their injury situation, which everybody has said that he's the most ready quarterback of this group. And I can't argue that, but is he the most ready to go in there on week 3 because Sam again tore his ACL or broke his spleen or whatever happens to Sam Bradford on a regular basis?
That's kind of the point. I think he will be. I mean, if he's the most ready, then that's kind of what that means. He's the most ready. I'm not sure how else you can take that. Really. No, I'm not trying to be a jerk. Like, if he's the most ready, that means he doesn't have to wait till week 3. He can play week 1.
No, I understand that. My point was, is he really the most ready? Like, we don't really know that.
No, of course not.
Player. Why don't you explain this to me like I'm 5?
Yeah, I'm trying to.
And I guess what my main point was too, I kind of phrased it a little funny, but my main point is that if you're the coach of this team and you're looking around and you're saying, man, if we throw Rosen in there week 1, he's going to get killed on this team. Then you don't have to do it. I guess that's kind of my main point. Like, yes, you want to see him as your week 1 starter if he is so ready to play, as we've all, kind of read and detailed. But if the team is just not going to be competitive around him, you don't have to just throw him to the wolves, is my main point.
Yeah, I like that. Just real quick, I like that move too. And that wasn't my pick, but it's silly to say this because, of course, Steve Keim and company there are always planning for the future and wanting to stay young. But, it feels like they were terrified from Matt Leinart in 2006. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. They went from Kurt Warner to like Kevin Kolb and then Carson Palmer and then Sam Bradford. What's the last time a guy under 25 started a game for the Cardinals? So I like that they showed that willingness, and I love the cost. Only a third and a fifth is ridiculous to move up in the first round. That they actually finally are like, hey, Josh Rosen, Christian Kirklater, we will have a future here with David Johnson. That's going to be pretty solid threesome there if all the guys work out.
For sure.
Yeah. Somebody else?
I'll go. This is going to be a very unpopular pick just based on the conversations that we've had as goons. But I heard Mike Mayock say at one point this weekend that Ballard is going to build the Colts from the inside out, and really that's the way we want it done. I love them getting Q Nelson. Like, I understand that like Chubb would have been a better player, but he was off the board, and Saquon would have been a better player, but he was off the board. I think trading back to 6 and still getting a ridiculous offensive lineman at that point to help solidify that, because let's be honest, if Andrew Luck goes down again, not only is your season over, but then we're going to start questioning his career. Yeah, you as good as a talent as he is, protecting him has to be your number one priority. And you have so many other picks that although the level of linebacker that you're going to get in the second is not going to be the same as Roquan, it can be argued that the level of guard that you're going to get, or tackle that you're going to get, or offensive lineman in general that you're going to get is not the level of Nelson. So
I don't even think it can be argued. Nobody was equivalent.
Okay. So we're on the same page for that. So although it's not a flashy pick, it's the right pick because you have to protect Andrew Luck. Use every other pick you want on defense, but start building that line so that Andrew Luck is protected back there for literally the first time in his career.
I don't think it's an unpopular pick. We both are. I'm not sure about South, but Miles and I had both talked about how it didn't really make sense to take a guard that early. It does make sense, though, when everybody else is off the board that was off the board, and apparently nobody was calling to trade up. So if nobody's calling to trade you, like, you're not just going to – I mean, Roquan is still a stud. Tremaine Edmonds is still a stud, so it would have been a good pick, but he was by far the best available there. That's not the one I picked, though, but I was just saying that I'm not giving you much argument there. I think the obvious one for me still was Saquon. It's not actually the one I picked, but because him going anywhere is a gem to me. So nobody can mess that up for me. But the one pick I did love, I loved what the Bills did. It was rumored that they were going to move in. They were at 7, that they were going to move into the top 5, possibly even move to 1 to take a quarterback and then lose that second first-round pick. But they stayed where they were and took Josh Allen, which your opinion on him is what it is. Apparently they like him and I like him. So I think it's a great pick to stay at 7, but also add Tremaine Edmonds. It's a brilliant pick because they got a quarterback that they wanted, but also an outstanding linebacker. So I think that they just dominated that pick and were really smart to stay where they were.
That was the part of the Josh Allen. I don't like Josh Allen. I'm on record with that, and that's fine. Sure. I'm probably wrong. Won't be the first time that I'm wrong on something like that. But we even said, sitting around watching the draft together, when they were able to trade up without losing 22, kudos to them. That's awesome, because then they were able to even trade up again to get Tremaine Edmonds.
Right. Well, that's what makes that pick so glorious is you didn't give up 22 and then turn 22 into what, 15 or 16, and then went and got
I think 17.
By all accounts, by what we've been talking about, the second best linebacker in this class as well.
Maybe even
and addressed your two biggest needs in this draft, which are quarterback and linebacker.
Yeah. I think it's funny when you look at it from what I read from a lot of Bills fans and the perspective online. And I get it that when you read things online, typically like the most obnoxious people are the loudest. But overwhelmingly, like the running joke is, well, we just have to kind of look at this as, let's reverse how we actually took it. Let's pretend that we took Edmonds at 7, so it softens the blow of, getting stuck with Josh Allen. Either way you slice it, like you got the players that you wanted without sabotaging your entire draft, which, is really good. But it is funny to me that a lot of Bills fans are really sour on it, and they're kind of looking at it from that perspective.
Not only did you not sabotage your draft, but you didn't sabotage future drafts, which almost always has to happen.
Yeah,
when do you
didn't lose next year's first?
Yeah, when do you trade up for a quarterback without losing your first-round pick next year?
Right.
I mean, the Saints lost theirs for an average edge player, but that's another conversation that we'll probably have shortly here. But my favorite one, quick, fit this in here. I like the Patriots grabbing Sony Michel at number 31.
Yeah.
Sorry, man, but it's debatable, I guess, if he was the best running back on the board or not, overall at that point. But he absolutely definitely fits best what New England likes out of a running back. Yeah. He's built in the mold of Dion Lewis, James White, who've been productive there, even, God forbid me to say it, but Danny Woodhead. He's built in that mode, but he's like 5 to 10 times the player any of those guys are.
Right.
So, I'm glad. Listen, it was really rumored they were thinking about Lamar Jackson trading up for a quarterback, whatever. I'm glad they ignored that. The fact that they took Isaiah Wynn and Sony Michel bolsters that run game. And it's funny because Sony was being compared to Alvin Kamara all through this draft process. And now on top of that, where he was selected, I really think he's going to do for Tom Brady what Alvin Kamara helped do for Drew Brees last year, which is, hey, let's not throw the ball 38 times a game. We're going to lean on this guy running the ball. I think with him in that backfield, and then you still have Brady and Gronk and Edelman coming back, Chris Hogan, Malcolm Mitchell, you're ridiculous. I don't know how you stop that offense this year. I really don't know how you do it when you couldn't really stop them before without a credible running back. I mean,
could possibly extend Brady's career too.
It could. You're going to drop back a lot less.
Yep.
And I read a lot afterwards about how internally, they kind of felt like that was their Alvin Kamara pick.
Right.
It is.
So they feel like he had that same ability to kind of transform their offense. And you look at the Drew Brees situation, we constantly ask the question, when is Brees going to ramp down? And now we're asking the question, when is Brady going to ramp down? But when you keep putting these like dynamic playmakers around them, it's going to do is extend the life cycle of these players because they're so smart about how they play. They take care of themselves and they just keep adapting and using these players around them and prolonging their careers. So that argument is right out the window with this pick.
Yeah. All right, let's turn things around a little bit. We've been too nice. I'll even say this nicely. What was the biggest head scratching move of round one through your eyes? Basically, who's an idiot?
I was really, really, really hoping that the Browns wouldn't do Browns things. And, I understand that boards are what boards are. But, how is Denzel Ward the fourth player pick there? How did you ignore – I understand, maybe Barkley would have been the guy for you. He's not there at 4. That's fine. How do you ignore Bradley Chubb? How do you ignore Roquan Smith and Tremaine Edmonds and Minkah Fitzpatrick and Derwin James for – we all talked about, how – this corner class was not fantastic. They just said, oh, well, he's the top guy corner on the board. We need a corner. We're going to take him. I hate to say it, but there were top flight corners. Even after he was taken at 4, there were top flight corners that we all love, like the Josh Jacksons of the world, still available when they picked in round 2. And obviously you can't know that in hindsight, but you don't know that other teams aren't valuing the corner position in this draft that way. That's your job to know that.
Everybody's covered that.
Everybody has covered that. That's what made me scratch my head the most is that you took Ward above some really other high caliber guys that you could have used. It's not like you had those positions filled. You went 1 in 32 in the last 2 years. You didn't have those positions filled. So you took a guy above other higher value guys in a year where that position wasn't even valued that high, as evidenced by the way the rest of the team went after corners. That just baffles my mind.
I can't even totally kill them for it. I don't care for the move, but when you look at what they're up against multiple times a year, you kind of have to be willing to take shots there. And like I get it that it was a reach factor and there were other players on the board, but when you're trying to turn the corner and compete and you're thinking to yourself, okay, we have to play AB twice a year. We've got to try and figure out AJ Green twice a year. And you're just repeatedly, game after game, year after year, just killed by these players. I think that's what weighed into it. And again, I'm not saying that they're right to do that, but I can kind of understand their line of thinking there. If they had him graded as a guy who can fix that problem for them, they did what they did for that reason, I guess.
It definitely felt like that classic draft to win your division first kind of move.
Right.
And I don't know. I feel strongly about that, and I'm sure they wish they could have traded down and still gotten him. But if not, I get it. But I agree with you, Rock, in a sense of tell me you wouldn't rather have Bradley Chubb and Josh Jackson.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, like you can't know that's going to happen, like you covered. But boy, oh boy, Bradley Chubb and Josh Jackson smells pretty good.
Boy, oh boy, even if it's not Josh Jackson, because like you can't predict that he's going to fall that far. But wouldn't you rather have Bradley Chubb and
Isaiah Oliver
or the 5th or 6th rated corner on your board than Ward and what you know is going to be probably the 5th or 6th best edge rusher in this class? Like I don't know. Like you want to stop the other teams in your division. How about getting to the quarterback before he has a chance to throw? And Myles Garrett and Bradley Chubb, yeah, that's going to happen.
Right.
Like this is. I know that the Browns are not my team, and and I have no care about the NFC North. The AFC North. But like, I feel like just banging my hands on the table, being like, "Stop doing Browns things." Like this is a Browns thing. You overcompensated because of your division when you didn't have to overcompensate.
Well, they can't stop. There's a reason there is that saying.
Right.
Okay, but that's why you're bad. You're bad because you passed on Bradley Chubb for Denzel Ward. Like. If you asked 100 analysts on this draft, 100 out of 100 would have picked Chubb over Ward. Not even 99 or 98 out of 100 out of 100. 100 out of 100.
So moving on, I didn't pick that one. I'm on record saying that I thought it was too early to give up on Emmanuel Ogbah. So, they just took who they thought was the best player there. But the biggest shocker for me, it was a weird one. The Steelers taking Terrell Edmonds was so weird to me. Like I thought they were going to take a safety, and it was rumored how much they liked Reed. But I don't see how Terrell Edmonds was the highest guy on their board there, and why they didn't. If he was even the highest guy on their board, why they didn't trade back? Like call anybody, just move back one spot. Even it just didn't make sense. I would have taken several safeties ahead of him, not to mention inside linebackers, which they also needed, and some corners that went after him, which they also need. So it was just all around a weird move to me. But apparently they see something in him that I don't, and the rest of the world doesn't.
Yeah, I kind of agree a little bit there. I will say I found a little tasty nugget from one of my favorite follows who was charting last-minute trips by teams on the last day that they were eligible to visit with players one-on-one. And the Steelers did send a crew to go and visit with him on the last day. And not a lot of teams, made last-second visits like that, but it kind of raised a red flag for me. So
not a lot of teams visited third-round guys with their last-minute decisions.
Well, I think a second round guy, which I detailed at footballgoons.com a couple weeks ago, but still, I get what you're saying with the reach there. So,
hey, I'm going to keep. Let me just keep the pile on going with the AFC North here. There were certainly a few, but I don't get the Ravens taking Hayden Hurst at number 25, even some. I mean, let me tell you this. I like that they at least traded down twice and then took him. So, yeah, you got something. But I didn't have him anywhere close to a round one prospect. Again, I've covered that on a past pod. But I don't even love him in the second round, and they took him in the first. They're far from a true contender on offense, and I don't see how a 25-year-old tight end prospect and then trading in to take a backup quarterback for themselves was the best use of their resources. Looking at 2018 alone, I'm not picking on them for taking Lamar Jackson. I get that. I think that was a good choice. I'd have much preferred them save their second-round pick next year and just taking Lamar Jackson at number 25. I don't get the point of Hayden Hurst at all, especially when they then took Mark Andrews later in the draft. Even they don't believe in Hayden Hurst.
That's the worst part to me, that they took Andrews still. They're like, oh crap, what if this guy doesn't work out?
But if you read the beat reporters, they're trying to spin it. It's that they're all in on the tight end position.
I would hope so. They're about to run like the double wing. God knows they don't have any receivers to throw to.
Well, we'll see how Hayden Hurst-Helmsley works out, but I'm going with the very obvious choice here, the one that I blatantly laughed out loud at, Marcus Davenport to the Saints. Yeah. Look, I get it if you had a high grade on the player. I really do. I understand it. Pass rushers are always at a premium. But you traded your 2019 first-round pick. You traded your pick later in the round, obviously, to move up. You lost your 2018 fifth-rounder as well to take, by all accounts, a very, very, very raw talent at the defensive end position. A guy who isn't even like a plug-and-play, a guaranteed starter for you at defensive end, because he's got so many different just mechanical and physical things that he has to learn throughout this whole entire offseason. So look, I understand you want the pass rusher. It was important to you. But the way that this draft fell through the rest of the way, and I don't know if a lot of other people had a high grade on him or what, but pure pass rushers kind of slid. So you might not have even had to move up at the end of the day to do that. And I don't know. It was a really big head scratcher to me to give up that much capital.
The biggest thing I didn't like about that move was the Saints are purely in win now. They're 100% win now mode. You got Drew Brees. And I don't think probably the most raw prospect in the draft in terms of first round prospects is the answer to the win now.
Right.
All right, so our third little segment here, we're going to do this as a Make the Case brought to you by Frank Walker Law. And we're going to give each guy about 30 seconds to 1 minute to answer this, no rebuttal. I want to know which prospect slide, we are no longer only in round one, this is the entire draft. Which prospect slide shocked you the most, and what do you think caused it?
I stuck with round one here, and he didn't slide that much, but going back to how I feel about what the Browns did and just how things played out, I know it was talked about a couple of weeks ago. I think Derwin James is a top 10 talent in this class, and the fact that he fell to the Chargers at 17, honestly, it's a good thing for him because I think the Chargers are a good team. I think they're an up-and-coming team, and he's going to help solidify that defense and make them really a force. But the fact that a guy as talented as him fell out of the top 10, and we watch so many other players that I don't think are of his caliber go ahead of him, I don't understand why he slid, I guess is my point. Like, I understand that we talked about the potential for him to slide, maybe based on team need or whatever the case may be, but I just think he's such a talented player. So for him to fall really shocked me.
Making me feel even better about my Chargers representing the AFC on the Super Bowl pick already.
Oh, I'm sure it does.
Mine was Josh Sweat. Josh Sweat falling made zero sense to me. Guy came in, destroyed the combine after a productive career at Florida State. He was getting a ton of round one love. Finally ends at pick 130 to the Eagles. And the way they rotate on the defensive line, he's going to get an immediate role on the team too. He's not going to be a starter, but he's going to play a ton. The guy was knocked fear of a knee issue in September of 2014. He destroyed every single thing in his knee to the point where he released after he was picked that he almost lost the lower half of his leg. So scary as anything. And obviously that might hold teams back. But after he came back, he obviously missed 2014, 15, 16, and 17, 3 years at Florida State. He missed one game. So this is clearly not an issue anymore. I can excuse teams for not wanting to use a first rounder on it, I guess, even though, like I just said, he's already shown it's not an issue. But the slide to 130 makes no sense to me with a guy with his pure talent and athletic ability. It's ridiculous.
I'll stick with the defensive end position here. And this one isn't as drastic of a slide. He only went to number 41 in Tennessee, ended up trading up and grabbing him. But Harold Landry sliding out of the first round and going number 41 was pretty surprising to me. And then to see that there wasn't a ton of action right at the top of round two for anybody willing to kind of try and shuffle around a little bit and jump up and grab him was quite surprising to me. By all accounts, he's much more polished as a pass rusher, especially more polished than Davenport, who went, in at 14. So he, to me, and from what I saw with a lot of analysts, he had a top 20 grade in this class, where it wouldn't have been a shock at all to see him go in the top 20 picks. I think that, he's a guy who you could put in and make him maybe start as a little bit more rotational, but by the end of the season, middle of the season, he's going to be, your every down kind of guy, because he has the athletic ability to outwork a lot of these tackles. He's got good bend, he's got good burst, good speed. So a lot of what you're looking for, length, long arms, athletic ability in pass rushers nowadays, he's got it all. So it was a little surprising to me.
Yeah, I went with a pretty obvious one, but Darius Guice slide in as far as he did really shocked me. Even with the reports that came out, they said he's immature. They said he had off-field issues that were embarrassing but not criminal. They said that he didn't interview well. He's a prima donna, that he's high maintenance. Listen, so are almost all the other players that went before and after him, and almost all the other players in the NFL. They're immature rich guys that are entitled, have been entitled their whole lives since they were in Pop Warner football. It's how they live life. Now, I know there are some stand-up citizens, but not that many of them. So we actually report and talk in length about it when there are really good guys, because it's shocking. It's not surprising that he's not that great of a dude. He's probably going to grow out of it. And if he doesn't, he's still a really good football player. And unless you think he's just a pure cancer to your locker room and your team, there's no reason that 6 running backs and 58 players went ahead of him. There are not 58 players better than Darius Guice. I guarantee it. So it was surprising to me that he fell that far.
I heard that Howie Roseman beat him in Madden, and he jumped out of his seat and hit reset and flipped out. So
that was enough.
All right. Let's focus for a second on teams. Just give me a team overall. We're going to include trading up, trading back, possibly gaining future picks, as well as just overall value and hitting their needs. Who do you think hit this weekend out of the park?
To me, the Packers did. I know that the draft class as a whole, a lot of their mid-round picks were kind of like depth or competition at the linebacker position, but they got a 2019 first rounder to move back. They still got Jair Alexander, who by all accounts they were going to take at that spot if they stayed there. So that's a win to me. I know some people are concerned about his size and can he cover. From everything that I've seen, the guy's a baller. He can play. So I think he's more than good enough. He was a great pickup for them, and they gained a pick next year. Then they go ahead at 45 and get Joshua Jackson, who a lot of people speculated they would take at 14. They got him 31 picks later. So you've automatically added those 2 guys to Kevin King. You've bolstered a weakness on your team where you couldn't stop anybody from throwing the ball on you last year. And you've significantly upgraded that position. You add that to Clinton Dix as your safety. It's a pretty formidable group across the board. They got a lot more depth at the linebacker position. They got some depth at pass rushing as well. And then to me, on the offensive side of the ball, they weren't just willing to settle and say, we've got some playmakers on offense on the outside, even though we lost Jordy. They went and added Jamon Moore and EQ St. Brown really late in this draft, which is kind of head scratching. But those are 2 guys who have high upside, really high upside on a team who has done really nothing but churn out really good wide receivers over the last couple of years. So you add those guys in to a really competitive group and you put them on the field with the best quarterback in the game right now, it's only going to mean good things for them. I think that they really hit this draft out of the park.
Yeah, you can write this down. EQ St. Brown's going to start for that team, and he's going to end up putting up major numbers as soon as this year.
Yeah.
I mean, we've covered him many times, and all he needed was a quarterback that wasn't Brandon Wimbush, and I don't think you can get further from Brandon Wimbush than Aaron Rodgers.
You can try, but you won't.
It's almost as far as you can get.
Right.
I think I might be in the minority, but I liked what the Raiders did. I liked that the value they got with Arden Key and with Mo Hurst, but that's not the one that I picked. I actually picked the Bucks. I loved their draft. Their first 2 rounds, I thought they did great. In the second round, they took MJ Stewart, where I probably would have taken Isaiah Oliver. I had him ranked higher, but still, Stewart is a great player. And they also got Vita Vea, Ronald Jones, and Carlton Davis before the second round was over. I also really like Jordan Whitehead. I think he's going to go and learn how to be a pro, and he's going to be a pretty solid safety. And I love what Mike Mayock said about Alex Kappa. He said his film is the nastiest film he's ever seen. So you got to like a guy like that. But just what they did in the first 2 rounds really solidified their team to me.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with the Broncos. I actually, your 2 were ones that I considered as well. But for me, I think I don't want to say it would have been a mistake, but trading up for the quarterback, I think, was really an unnecessary thing for me right now. They stayed put at 5. They grabbed the best defensive player in this class in Bradley Chubb. They then filled needs at running back and tight end with quality guys, Royce Freeman and Goon's favorite, Troy Fumagalli. You guys have talked about him at the tight end podcast, and he's going to be one of our guys to watch for sure. But then mostly on top of that, their wide receiver group is shallow and kind of getting a little older with Emmanuel Sanders and Demaryius Thomas. I'm certainly not going to pick on those 2 guys. I think even just Case Keenum, they're going to come back to putting up crazy numbers. But your future is now secured by adding Cortland Sutton and Deshaun Hamilton. Sutton's a first-round prospect. They got him in the second. Deshaun Hamilton might have been my favorite receiver in the class as far as just his overall route running and athletic ability, and they were able to steal him late. Defensively outside of Chubb, which I say definitely not lightly outside of Chubb, they only added Isaac Yiadom and Josie Jewell, but Josie Jewell's another Goon's favorite. We like this guy. Yeah. Isaac's the nice corner on a spot where they needed one. Josie's going to come in and start at linebacker. But on top of that, defense isn't the issue in Denver. I like what they did at the skill positions on offense. They really bolstered them quickly. Royce Freeman's going to be the starter there. I don't care about Devontae Booker. Even Case Keenum, this is going to be a team to watch now on a team that I actually had buried before the draft. I really liked what they did.
Yeah. I went a little bit outside the box, and it's a team that I normally don't like, but I am impressed by what they did.
The Patriots.
No, not the Patriots. The Chicago Bears. I love what the Bears did. They were sitting there in the back end of the top 10 at 8. Roquan falls in their lap. I didn't expect him to be there at 8. To be honest, but he falls to their lap. They take the captain of their defense for the future, and then what they do in the second round, just all it does is help their potential franchise quarterback. We're going to find out now if Trubisky can be the guy, because you're solidifying the line up front with James Daniels, and then you're giving him another weapon outside of Allen Robinson and Anthony Miller. This was the worst wide receiving class in the league last year, and sneaky 7th-round pick to go with it, Miles's boy Wims from Georgia. Now you have a nice, solid combination of big-bodied and fast wide receivers. We're going to find out if Trubisky's the real deal, because he's got a line in front of him now that can block for him. He's got a fantastic running back behind him in Jordan Howard, and you added 2 receivers in this draft class to go along with your free agent signing of Allen Robinson to really just make this whole draft a home run for the Bears.
And Trey Burton and Tariq Cohen that you didn't even mention. That's
absolutely.
Bears offense, if Trubisky's the guy, is going to be pretty nice.
Yeah.
All right, this time we're going to throw it over to South. Hear a word from our boys over at Gorb.
Yeah, let me tell you about our friends at Gorb. That's GHORBH. Now that the NFL draft is in the books, you're probably wondering, what's the next step for these rookies? Well, they've got to get hungry. And I know that kind of sounds funny on the surface, but our friends at Gorb remind us that you've only got 2 choices: to get hungry or be hungry. And getting hungry is all about getting after it, finding out what fuels you, and chasing and pursuing your dreams so that you don't look back and instead you are wishing that you would have gotten hungry. Instead, now you just get to be hungry and miss out on all the rewards. So these guys have to get in there, hit the playbooks, get into camp, learn the system, kind of get rid of that rookie shine, so to speak, and get hungry and go after it in their rookie year. We want you to check them out, ghorbh.com today. You could find all kinds of great apparel for guys, gals, kids, all different colors, all different sizes, all different styles. There's something for everyone to give you that constant reminder to either get hungry or be hungry. ghorbh.com.
Awesome. Thanks, man. All right, we're going to move on here. Our last two segments, we're going to call this Favorite Fits in Fantasy. So we're going to ignore the first round here for a minute and just assume everybody there crushed their picks, which is obviously not going to end up being true. Who knows who it's going to be? Let's hope it's not any of our teams. I know it's not my team. We didn't blow the first round because we didn't draft anybody. So what was a pick on days 2 or 3? Let's focus kind of later in the draft where teams are really made or broken. Days 2 or 3, you felt was just a perfect marriage between a team's positional need and the selected prospect's value.
I think this one is a no-brainer. When you look at some of the pre-draft grades that were out there and some of the players who were projected to be selected a little bit higher, I think overwhelmingly people felt like Mo Hurst from Michigan was going to be a first rounder, an early second rounder. Well, the Raiders, due to maybe a little bit of a scare at the combine with, some issues with his heart during testing, got him at 140 in this draft. Okay. This is a guy with a top 30 grade by largely, all analysts that I could see. A guy who has proven time and again that he is a disruptive force at the defensive tackle position, which was definitely a need that the Raiders needed to address. I don't know that it was their top need, but again, it was definitively a need for them. And they got one of the best defensive tackles in this class at 140 in the draft. Look, you could be scared about what came back in the tests. Obviously, there was some concern there from a lot of different teams. But from everything that I have read since the combine and then over the last couple of days, he's been cleared by multiple different doctors in the cardiology field. Not really any long-term concern there. So unless there's something that we don't know, that maybe he had an issue in high school or something too, and that it reared its head again or something, I don't know. We could speculate and talk about it. And as you said out of the top, like everything that we think we know nothing. Right. But the bottom line is that this is a guy who was, to me, a no-brainer first rounder, and the Raiders got him at 140. You can't get much better value than that.
I'm going to stick with the Raiders. I already talked about that. I love that Mo Hurst pick, but I love that they got Arden Key at 87. I talked a little more in depth on our articles that, when you draft Arden Key, he's going to slide, but you hope you get, closer to the 2016 Arden Key with 55 tackles and 11 sacks than you get with the guy that had some off-field issues, didn't play a full season, was thinking about never playing again. Obviously, you're hoping you get closer to the previous guy, but even if he's somewhere in between at 87, it's great value for a need that they needed. They had a big need at defensive end, outside linebacker, those positions that Arden Key can fill both of them for him. And he's just, if he returns even close to what he was, that we saw glimpses of, that he was going to be a no-brainer first-round pick, they got a steal at 87.
Right. Well, I'm going to talk about not the Raiders for,
right,
fans of the other 31 teams here.
Boring.
I am going to go in the 5th round with you, though, South. I'm going to go to pick 153. I love when the Detroit Lions took Tyrell Crosby at pick 153. This is a guy I personally had an early second-round grade on. He's a swing player, guard tackle, nasty, nasty attitude. I like the player alone, but when you look at what he now gives Detroit, he's going to play in between Taylor Decker, who was a first-round pick just a couple years ago, and then a first-round pick from this year, and Frank Ragnow is likely going to be their starting center. That is the angriest, most I hate everybody left side of any line in the league. Is it the most talented? Maybe not. Maybe. But all three of those guys really hate people. And that's a good thing to have up front. And then combine them with the fact that they've got TJ Lang and Ricky Wagner on the right side. This is very, very quickly a top 5 line in this league, in the entire NFL. And what's the one thing that's been holding this team back? The line. The line's been getting Matthew Stafford killed back there. So when you combine that rookie 5th round steal with a great first round pick and 3 nice pieces they already had, it's about time that these skill position players that the Lions really do have really get some time to flourish. So I look out for the Lions on offense a little bit.
Yeah.
Rock, who do you have here?
One was the guy that already got brought up in this podcast, and I thought it might fly under the radar, but I really like Josh Sweet to the Eagles. I mean, they're a team that rotates through the pass rush as it is, and now you're bringing in a guy who was ranked much higher than 130th overall in this class to a group that, one, has some aging guys like Brandon Graham, who were not going to be there forever, unfortunately. Sorry if you guys, hoping that he was, but he's not going to be there forever. And the way they rotate anyway, he's going to get playing time or should get playing time as a rookie, so that by the time BG does retire and some of these veterans do hit up the end of their contract, he's ready to come in and be an everyday player. So that was one that I really loved late in the draft.
All right, last little segment here. We are ultimately, hey, we're hitting you with everything. We are ultimately a fantasy football podcast. I think that's kind of what we like to call ourselves. We're well-rounded, so we give you a little bit of everything. But I absolutely refuse to let this night go by without talking about a little bit of fantasy. So what I'd like to do is kick around a couple of guys that we love as rookie value picks. And more importantly, I kind of want to focus on not just is your guy good, but where do you think in redraft formats you're going to have to go ahead and pull the trigger? I don't know if did anybody bring up Saquon Barkley before I say this?
No.
I think we all kind of tried to go a little later. Listen, 4 for 4, I think we would all like Saquon Barkley this year. He's an incredible talent. The Giants aren't great up front, but ultimately he's going to be your first or second round pick, period. I think what we kind of focused on is a little bit later, where you're going to have to pick some of these guys that are, the Kareem Hunt maybe being an extreme situation, or Alvin Kamara from last year, where they're later on, but keep your eye on these guys because those are the type of guys that win you championships. So who wants to jump in here? A rookie that's going to go ahead and help somebody win a chippy this year.
I'll go. Surprising, I didn't pick a running back, but
wait, hold on, what?
I didn't pick a running back because I don't want to give you Gooners some insight here into my draft already. I've already covered. I love DJ Moore, and I love him going to the Panthers. If you've listened, you've heard Miles and I speak highly on him. I love the kid, but I think he fits perfectly there. The Panthers and Cam have made some pretty mediocre to poor receivers look productive in that system. And DJ Moore is all around a good receiver. I promise you he's a better receiver than Ten Ginn is. I promise he is. He's almost as fast. He runs a 4.42 40, but he's just a better all-around receiver and talent. And he's almost as good at the deep ball as Ted Ginn, but he can do everything else much better. And I think he can have similar numbers. He can have at least 700 yards. I think he's going to be closer to 1,000 yards, and he's going to be pressing up in those 10 touchdown area. And I think you can get this guy in pretty late in your draft, wide receiver 3 or 4 on your team, most likely a wide receiver 4, but the upside of easily being a wide receiver 2. There's no question he can be in the wide receiver 2 conversation come end of the season this year.
So I actually tried to stay away from the wide receiver because other than DJ Moore, I think every other one of these top rate wide receivers is going to be playing second or even third fiddle in their offense. Just the way it panned out with where these guys were ranked and valued.
To jump in real quick, don't you think that doesn't matter though? I mean, third fiddle, fine. But I this was not my guy, but I'm in love with Calvin Ridley in fantasy this year.
Yeah, I agree.
I am, but I mean, listen, you have
all due respect to Mohamed Sanu, he's twice the player Mohamed Sanu is, and Julio Jones is still going to get the attention he gets. I don't know. I
like Ridley too. But he should be the number 2 receiver. But they also have two backs that they also have two backs that they use pretty regularly and in the passing game. I'm not saying I don't like the pick. I'm just saying I tried to stay away from wide receivers because other than Moore, I see everyone as a second fiddle guy. That's just the way I see it. Okay. And there's nothing against that because hey, what fantasy league doesn't use 2 wide receivers?
There's a lot of fiddles.
There's a lot of fiddles. But no, I actually did focus it on the running back. I pulled a deal here. I screamed on the table that the Seahawks should be drafting Darius Geis to give Russell Wilson some help. They didn't do that, but they did take Rashard Penny. And if he's the second back on their board and that's how they viewed it, they obviously like the guy, and they're doing exactly what I thought they should do, which was get Russell Wilson some help. He is going to be the lone back in that backfield. There's no one. Listen, I'm not worried about anybody stealing carries from him. Okay, Thomas Rawls is gone, and listen, McKissick is not the guy I'm worried about. CJ Prosise, I'm not worried about, although I love him. But I'm sorry, CJ. I'm not worried about you. Penny is going to be the feature back there. They're going to take pressure off Russell Wilson. It's going to happen. They cannot afford to have him die. So I love Rashard Penny right now because he is going to be the feature back in Seattle.
Don't those names you said scare you a little bit, that they're not great at evaluating running back talent, though?
Well, no, because they didn't take any of those guys in the first round, and they fell. Most of those guys, like Prosise was a 4th round pick. McKissick, I believe, was undrafted. Yeah. So they're taking shots in the dark at these guys and hoping something sticks, which I think a lot of those late round prospects are. But I think they finally realized, hey, this is a need for us. We're not going to get better unless we address the run game. And I wanted it to be Geis, and I still think Geis is a better player. But if Penny's the second guy on their board, I'm all for it. That's the guy they wanted, obviously. They addressed the need, and they traded back to do it. But that has nothing to do with fantasy.
So listen, I called that this was going to happen. I knew this was going to happen in our pre-show, where we don't reveal a lot of this because we want to have a more organic reaction, just to kind of peel the curtain back. Penny's my guy here. This is the guy that I said in the pre-show that either everyone's going to agree with me on it or I'm going to get roasted. So at least one other person is agreeing right now. But Rashard Penny is absolutely the guy for me that is the most appealing because, as you mentioned, the pick, was probably considered laughable by a lot of people for the reach factor and given how the boards broke out for the actual teams. But so many running backs went in the first 2 rounds of this draft that it was very obvious that teams were going to make that a number 1 priority to get these young backs. If Seattle had him as their number 2 back, then kudos to them for being willing to take them. All right. I'm not going to roast them about it. It is what it is. There's no competition at the running back position for him on that team at all. I don't even think that there's really that much to be worried about as far as pass catchers go on that team for this guy in a world where, more than anything, we're moving toward at least a half PPR as like a standard in fantasy football. This guy's going to be a monster this year. I'm going to give you the first warning right now. If you're an early drafting team, you may be able to get away with getting him a little bit later on. But the bottom line is that by the time we get closer to week 3 of the preseason, this is going to be a late 4th, early 5th round pick at the absolute latest, where you could pick up this guy in a 10-team standard draft. I really strongly believe that he's a number 50 to 55 overall guy, even preseason, because of what he brings, the versatility, dual threat ability, the massive upside that he has. If he stays healthy, I know a lot of people, we kind of were joking the other night that, there's already projections out. These are my projections that if he could stay healthy, he's going to go for 1,080 yards rushing, 9 touchdowns, 45 catches, because there's really just nobody in that offense right now to catch the ball, 417 yards, and 3 more touchdowns.
I'll write it down.
Write it down.
Wow. Now, is that so? I'm not sure where to go with that. I mean, I don't know how you feel about him, but from what I just gathered out of these 2 knuckleheads,
they're going to take him way before we do.
It's nice to know that a better player is going to get pushed to me.
Who? Rex Burkhead?
Listen.
Rex Burkhead. Why are we? No, you know what? I think it screams a lot that you equate Rashard Penny to Rex Burkhead, because that's about the value I'm going to place on the guy.
Well, no, we're talking about draft position, and when you just pull up like a top 200 right now.
Well,
those are the players that are in that wheelhouse right now,
and they're all going to stay there.
No,
they're not.
But
At least in my wheelhouse.
That's where I'm going to keep on my list.
But that's the point of this discussion is that, right now, where do you feel like you're going to have to take these kind of guys? I think it's going to be at a minimum in that zone. So as it stands right now, before anything shuffles,
I'm not going to take these guys.
Okay, but you know what? Like, to agree with South some more, we're talking about making Penny either your flex or your fourth back off the bench.
Not if he's your 4th round pick.
No, I don't think he's going to be the 4th round pick. I will back off from that a little bit. But what I'm saying is
he's going to have 2,000 all-purpose yards. That's South.
but in South's mind too, he did say, like, after we get into the 3rd week of the preseason where teams have seen how things played out, this guy's. I'm not saying he's going to be Alvin Kamara, but he's going to start getting Kamara-like touches in a backfield that has no one else.
This sounds exactly like what you said about CJ Procise last year.
No, it does not.
It's a repeat. Let me read some names to you.
This is a Kareem
Mike Davis. Mike Davis. No, it's not.
Yes,
Mike Davis, Chris Carson, J.D. McKissick, Eddie Lacy, Thomas Ross, C.J. Procise, Christine Michael, Bryce Brown, DeJuan Harris. Running backs are just a dime a dozen there, and he's just going to be another guy.
So they can't change their philosophy?
Apparently not in any of those 10 guys.
Hey, let me give you another name, Marshawn Lynch. Hey, they were pretty good. They were pretty good when they had Marshawn Lynch, weren't they?
Yeah,
so maybe they're looking to go back to that. And I'm not saying he's Marshawn. Don't get me wrong.
Good. I'm glad you're not.
They finally addressed the position. Is my point. Like
they tried to with all these other guys that everybody had low ratings.
No, they didn't. They didn't draft any of those guys in the 1st round.
No, they didn't put the same.
That was the best thing they did. Then
they didn't put the same value in draft capital on it. And look, like. We laugh about this now because it's fun to laugh about it, but like I've got a little bit of a history going right now with some running backs. A couple years ago, called my shot on David Johnson. I think this is a clone of skill set.
Don't say David Johnson.
You're going to tell me that if you put his tape on and look at the skill set that he could bring, I'm not talking about talent, but as far as what he can bring to an offensive portfolio,
he's a running back.
The same thing.
He's a running back.
But not all running backs are that dual threat. Like this is a guy who can catch 60 balls if you ask him to. Like there's no doubt in my mind. So in a half PPR, why is it that insane to think that he's a late 4th, early 5th round pick when so many, of these other running backs are so dependent on just the touchdown now. So we're changing how things are doing. By default, we're going to half PPR in a lot of places. So that's where the value comes in on a guy like this. Because
give me a rounded number you think he'll be. Like running back what? Just give me a guess.
Probably.
What by the time we draft?
No, at the end of the season.
At the end of the season?
Yeah. Running back what?
I think he's easily a running back like 12, 13.
12 or 13?
Yep. I was going to say 15, 16.
Oh,
12 or 13 because of his ability to catch the ball. I feel that strongly about it. Like you guys openly laughed at me years ago about David Johnson. Not you.
Okay.
No, I didn't laugh at you then. I said it was too early to say he was the best running back in the league, which it was. That wasn't crazy.
Well, we're not putting Penny as the best running back in the league.
12th is high.
I understand that. But like you understand that every year a guy like Danny Woodhead finishes in the top 12 because he catches so many balls.
Danny Woodhead hasn't played since 1997. Careful.
All right, but you get my main point. It's like there's just that guy who catches so many passes that he by default is a top 12 guy. So,
Danny Woodhead hasn't been a high-scoring running backs in 49 Seahawks running backs.
All right, listen, I'm gonna get my guy out there. I didn't want to go ahead and be redundant. My guy, honestly, is Sony Michel, and I'm shocked that none of you said him. You can write this down on the write it down too. Sony Michel will be the number 1 scoring rookie player. That's a guarantee. He'll end up this season RB1 and rookie. Rocco, I don't care if you hate the Patriots or not. It has
nothing to do with hating the Patriots. It has to do with the fact that they don't use the running back that way.
They use running backs like crazy. You're
not the same one for 16 games.
because they I can't believe we're just arguing now. They haven't had a player near Sony Michel's ability. Not even close. Not even close. My guy moving on here, is a guy that I want to be careful to say this. I think might outscore your boy over there in Seattle. I'm going to go Kerryon Johnson in Detroit. I just went off about their line last segment, and then not even talking about the fact that Matthew Stafford's throwing the ball to Golden Tate and Marvin Jones. They've got a great passing game to go with it. The only reason he's not going to score with some of these other guys, he is going to share the backfield a little bit. Disappointing. Amir Abdullah is crazy disappointing. LeGarrette Blount's going to be their short yardage guy. Ultimately, what will hurt him, like South said, a lot of leagues are going PPR or half. He's going to really have to fight with Theo Riddick for those catches. But Kerryon Johnson's another guy with that complete skill set. Absolutely saw it at Auburn. He's a tough back. What I like about him, definitely more than Penny, even more than Saquon and Sony and those guys, is the value you're going to get at the draft with him. He's absolutely, even if you draft late after the preseason starts, barring injury to one of those above players, he's going to be a double-digit round pick. When everybody's filling in their roster with their fourth, fifth, maybe even sixth running backs in certain leagues, that's where a guy like Kerryon Johnson's going to be. My urge is that he's your top player in that tier because he should be. This South is the Kareem Hunt situation this year, where Spencer Ware goes down, Kareem Hunt takes the whole backfield and doesn't have to leave the field. One thing I'll say about the backs in Detroit that kind of quote-unquote ahead of him on the depth chart, Amir Abdullah, Theo Riddick, not exactly the pictures of health. LeGarrette Blount's a nice short yardage guy, but he's not going to be their back every down. So should something happen to Amir Abdullah especially, and honestly I think he could be cut if Kerryon Johnson's kind of taken off. That's the type of guy that I like because you're absolutely getting draft value. Like South said, you're going to have to take Rashad Penny in the first couple of rounds. I'll be unwilling to do it. You're going to have to take Sony and Nick Chubb and Saquon Barkley in the early rounds. You can get Kerryon Johnson back when people are filling in their roster with guys like Giovanni Bernard. So that's kind of where I feel Kerryon Johnson's value is. You're going to take him in a tier where he's going to outscore everybody easily.
I think it's funny that Miles talked about Sony Michel from the Patriots, who never used one running back all year long, and then the crowded backfield of the Detroit Lions, coached by Bill Belichick's former defensive coordinator.
But like, all right,
I just think it's funny. Like it made me laugh. It made me snicker. I'm not picking on you because when it comes to fantasy, I really can't pick on you. But I'm just saying, the Patriots don't really value back. So I love Sony. I love Sony. I think Sony's like the best, one of the best running backs in this draft.
I don't want to fight. I don't want to fight for 20 minutes about Rashad Penny here, but you're going to tell me the Patriots don't value backs, but you're going to tell me the number one rookie in the class is Rashad Penny because he's Seattle's only back. There isn't a team in the league that cares less about running backs than Seattle. And yes, I think it says a ton that they drafted him in the first round, so that could absolutely change. Ultimately, the Patriots running back, like I know fantasies are played this way, but if you did, hey, I have the Patriots running backs, you're winning every league always.
Yeah, but that's why you don't take the Patriots running backs.
Okay, but nowhere near Sony Michel ever. All that list that Deal just read about Seattle's running backs, you can do that same thing with New England's running back. Yeah. 5th round pick, undrafted, 6th round pick, 4th round pick. We traded for this guy in October because his other team got bored. Like you can list that on forever, but ultimately both of these guys, what their team said is, hey, we're going to stop doing that, and this is our guy now. And Sony Michel's twice the back Penny is.
Yeah, I get what you're saying.
Better offense.
I get what you're saying, but like another thing that we have to take into consideration with Seattle, not to keep going back to that, but like none of those guys could stay healthy. So even if they wanted to try and commit to them, this is true. They can't. So I mean, you have to weigh that in a little bit. I mean, I don't know how much.
And to say that they weighed in some. And to say that they don't care about the running back, they do care about the running back. They just couldn't hit on one. That was the problem. They were going through guys left and right, but they were trying to find that next Marshawn Lynch, and it just wasn't happening for them. The Patriots, no matter what, in my mind, like, hey, Jonas Gray runs for 199 yards and 4 touchdowns and is benched the next week because that's just what they do. They do Patriots things. And you know what? It wins them Super Bowls. I can't complain. But, like, I said it last year, and I said it again, and I'll say it again this year. As long as Bill Belichick and Tom Brady are their coaches and quarterback, I'm not touching their running back situation because Michel could really go bust out for 400 yards in the first 4 weeks and score 4 touchdowns. And then for some reason, they do Patriots things, and now he's their number 3 running back on their depth chart, and they're running Mike Gillislee for 3 weeks straight.
Well, listen,
you're going to tell me that kind of stuff doesn't happen with them?
We're talking about situations where people change their philosophy. And I understand what you're saying and based on the history. But to Miles's point, how do you look at the situation in New Orleans last year and seeing, where Drew Brees is age-wise and what it meant to them to have a dominant player or players actually at the running back position, and you're not Bill Belichick and you don't try to copy and replicate that same thing? I think that they see this exact opportunity to have a dominant player at the running back position and just kind of add a new wrinkle, so to speak, to your offense. So I think that teams regularly change the way they approach things. So it's unfair to just go based on past history. And I don't know how much we can go, maybe they're changing their mind, but we have to consider that it's happening.
Let's agree to disagree. How do you guys feel about Geis that late and being that there's really no one in front of him in Washington to try and steal carries from him?
I'm afraid this year for Geis, I'm kind of out because I know I just talked about the crowded backfield in Detroit a little bit, but Kerryon's way better than those players. And I think Geis is certainly better than what Washington has. Chris Thompson's insanely underrated. They're not going to leave him off the field. So ultimately, Geis is never going to be on the field on third down, which hurts you in passing value leagues. And they're not going to totally ignore Samaje Perine. So Geis is going to get the lion's share of the work there. He's going to get the points. I'm not trying to dismiss him, but I don't think this is the year to go in on him either. I'll draft him at the right price, but I feel like most leagues he's going to be a 5th round pick. I'm not sure.
Really? I don't see him.
Maybe not. Without really breaking it down, maybe not. But ultimately, I won't be paying that kind of price.
See, I maybe a little bit higher, but I see him more in that Kerryon Johnson range than I do in the Rashard Penny range. That's a no-brainer to me.
Right. Yeah, I like Geis a good bit. I'm just a little nervous with the timeshare there this year. Plus, the whole Alex Smith is your quarterback thing.
Is there any of that stinks? Is there any running back in the top 7 or 8 that we talked about in our running back pod that you are completely out on? Because I think they're all in pretty good, decent situations.
I kind of think this is going to be a nice running back rookie year. I mean, we didn't talk about Ronald Jones.
Nope.
He's gonna own Tampa's backfield. There's no doubt about that. Royce Freeman, I think he could end up owning Denver's backfield. So
Nick Chubb is probably going to work his way to the top of that class.
As much as he's my favorite player in this group, I actually think he has the hardest route to getting points because they're definitely going to – Carlos Hyde and Duke Johnson are not jokes.
No.
I mean, that's definitely going to be a 3-headed backfield to the point of like Browns running backs are going to have a lot of points, and very rarely will you start a Browns running back.
Yeah. It'll be like it'll kind of be like, not to keep going back to it, it'll kind of be like the Patriots. Exactly what you're saying. Who scored the touchdown, and like you started Chubb and Hyde scored twice, but
right.
Duke Johnson got 8 catches. Like it's just all over the place.
Right. All right, guys. Well, I think that's going to do it for this edition of the show here. We had a lot of fun talking about this draft class. Be sure to keep up with us, facebook.com/footballgoons. We are at footballgoons on the Twitter, and you can absolutely subscribe to our YouTube channel where we're live every Sunday night. And I want to stress that a lot of podcasts are going to take a little breather here. We are not doing that. We will continue to give you fresh, brand new topics, information, and let's just say downright fun all spring and summer long. We will not be taking any weeks off here. We've got a lot of fun topics planned here in the next couple of months. As we lead towards the mid and late summer, we're obviously going to get fantasy football crazy here, kicking some of the best fantasy football prep in the industry your way throughout the next few months. Please keep up with us on social media. Each week, we're going to feature some of your comments and questions live on air as you give them to us, and they're relevant and fun. Thanks again for the listen, and we'll catch you next time.